Man, Nick's busting out the bubbly early.
Gotta stay hydrated.
Hitting the juice, getting loose.
Coconut LaCroix.
I haven't had a straight coconut LaCroix in a good hard while, like years.
What's wrong with you?
We've honestly kind of transitioned to a bubbly family.
Happens to the best of us.
I like the blackberry bubbly a lot. I like the watermelon bubbly a lot. I like the coconut pineapple bubbly just fine.
Blackberry is a perfectly cromulent bubbly, but it's not a fave.
Tastes like vitamins, dude.
Yabba dabba doo.
What it needs to get that extra flavor profile is like a little bit of chalk, just sort of dusted in there.
It tastes like Smarties and Robitussin, and I couldn't be happier.
Now you're speaking Chris's language.
Takes me back to 7th grade.
That takes me back to the dark, dark days.
When you could still take cough medicine.
You know what? A flip just switched. I used to just take it every time I got sick, and then one day, my body said, no.
The flip switched.
How about we make you violently ill instead? How about boils on your hands and feet? How does that sound?
I hate hives so badly, man.
Dude, not hives, boils.
Hives are worse than boils.
They were painful.
Yeah, hives are painful. But yeah, I got hives on the bottom of my feet, and that was horrific. I couldn't wear socks. I couldn't go anywhere. I just had to stay home with like ice packs on my feet.
That is terrible. On that note, this is the Constant Crusade Hivecast, and we're here today with all sorts of people. But first, it's Nick Durheim.
Hives, Hornet, Silk Song 2024, rated by the ESRB, rated by South Korean Ratings Board. Let's go.
It's all connected.
It's gonna happen.
Chris Gilby for her.
This conversation is giving me hives.
It's too early for this. It's 11 o'clock where you are, Chris. Okay, and we've got Brandon Gustavson, everybody's favorite heel.
And girl be selling sunshine. I'm here to make your day shine.
And Brennan Allen, reluctantly here early.
This was my idea.
Yeah, where's the reluctance? I feel like the rest of us are the reluctant ones.
Although I could use another like 5 hours in bed. That would be muy bueno.
Yeah, I got off at like 10:30 last night, and then or like 11 maybe, and then like when I went to bed at 12:30, you were still on. And I was like, wait, what?
Had to get, those games of Rocket League in.
Not even Binding of Isaac. Big gamer.
No, I watched that video to go to bed.
Okay.
Dude, I've kind of gotten like full Brennan about Hades, watching build videos on YouTube and shit. I hit 71% trophy completion last night, and I've been just grinding out all my keepsakes, which is going to probably take another 70 complete runs to max them all out. Oh, it's such a grind, man.
What's your ideal build? Like, what are you finding is your go-to weapon aspect and your go-to build?
I honestly like everything except for the bow and the gun, because I am a dash build kind of guy. I want to get up and close and personal. I want to spam my attack, and I just want a nonstop middle finger on that paddle in the back and just dash, 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 dash. So Athena, deflection, and then anything that just boosts my attack, and then, stacking status effects.
The bow with the, I think it's one of the hammer abilities that gives it the shotgun blast. Very, very effective when you're up close and personal, because you're getting like 5 procs on like an up close and personal hit. Real nice.
I did do a run where I just built out my bow's special, but you had to be up close and personal to like hit all of those, and then I doubled the amount of arrows that fire with the special. But it was a really annoying run, and it's the only time I've used the bow. I cleared it, and that was it. But anyway, down the rabbit hole on that. Constant Crusade podcast. Today, we're doing our Fantasy Critic quarterly update. We have the whole crew here. It has been a very active year. I wish I had show notes and was organized so that we could like really go through things with a fine-tooth comb. But we're just going to round robin and talk about what our year has been, notable releases, notable trades, notable pickups, thought processes, why did we do what we did? And there will be a lot of interjection. I'm sure there'll be a lot of shit talking, as there has been in the group chat for months now. I am curious as to whether Brandon is going to come in full heel the way he has been on the internet, or if we're going to get a more tamed down, friendlier version of Brandon. But we'll see. But Brandon, we're going to start with you today. We're putting you on the spot.
Woo!
I love how professional you hit me with the woo, but you knew exactly how far to move that mic back.
Oh, thank you. I've had a good teacher. Their name is I think it's like Jigstradamus or something like that.
Jigstradamus. Not this year. Not so far.
It's hard to decide because it's like what do people want? Do people want that animation? They want that character role, or are they here for the nitty gritty, getting in there and just like the mind of the choices we make? And so it's all like if I'm being technical about what I'm doing, it's all like I'm not gonna be over the top, but at the same time, like y'all gonna get crushed because I'm gonna be the indie king next year. I'm gonna be known as the indie king because that's what I'm gonna live on, is all these little indie games that you guys are just sitting there. Oh, you're gonna get like 2 points. I'm pulling out 13s. 7's not as good, but I'm just pulling out all these big numbers on all these indie games. You guys sitting there, oh, counterpick all of Brandon's games, and then I'm gonna sink all your battleships. What?
Brandon, you've had an interesting year. I have a lot of thoughts on it, but maybe I'll just wait for you to kind of give us a rundown of what's happened, what's transpired, what's released, how has this unfolded, and how are you feeling about it?
I mean, you got to think this is like my first year, so it's like I got to try some things. So it's all like I'm getting used to the systems. It's all like I listened to a couple of different your episodes last year about the Fantasy Critic, and so it's like, but I don't have like a full scope of how everything works, and like normally I don't care about what critics think. I like what I like, and so it's not something I watch as well, and so I'm getting used to more into that and learning. And there's new systems that, I mean, we're all learning because like a month and a half ago, you guys without me decided it'd be cool to just sit there and rag on me for the trade system and the trades I decided to do. So my infamous Tekken for $6, I didn't even get to speak what my mind was for that.
Break it down for us there.
So the trade system, it was new, so we didn't fully understand how it worked. So when EJ had approached me about trading some of my games and whatnot, and he was all like, "Oh, you name your price and we'll work with it." He's being very fair, so I'm not gonna say that like he was trying to like hose me or anything. But like how I thought the trade system worked is we just agreed on a trade and it kind of happened and it would just show up. So like I was like, "Oh, I'm going to trade. I'm pretty confident that I'm going to win even if I lose a big game. So I'm going to trade Tekken for $6 because it's just going to show and everybody's going to see it. And they're just going to go, what happened? Oh my God. Not knowing that people like will have time to have a say and see it and like accept it or reject it. So like the big show, I mean, I definitely created far more chaos, but more hostile chaos than I originally had planned for that trade. So I got part of what I wanted, just not exactly how I wanted it.
I think it worked out well in the end because we reevaluated our trade process and came up with a good system, which we've gone in detail about on a prior episode. But I think it was good because it leads to more interaction as these trades come up and we have to sort of debate, is this good, is this bad? Here's why you should or shouldn't do it. And lets people come in with counter offers. And personally, I quite like it.
Brandon, earlier you said that you were relying on being the indie king. How many indie games do you think you have above everybody else?
Oh, above
because by
everybody
my
else?
count, being generous, you have 7 indies. I have 7 indies. EJ has 7 indies. Brennan has 7 indies. And Chris has about 6 indies.
Wow, we're all the same.
And I'm counting stuff like Sandland as an indie, even though I think it's published by Bandai Namco, which is a AAA publisher. So I'm being very generous.
I appreciate that. It should not be counted, so I should be right there 6 with Chris. Hey, Chris, we're together.
Indie Kings, Chris and Brandon.
Yay.
I imagine you two will be neck and neck in the standings this year.
Oh, thanks. I know what that
True
means.
Kings.
Probably not at the top of the pile. Okay, so Tekken for $6 didn't happen. Tekken for $12 didn't happen, though it was going to.
Tekken for $20 did not happen. There was an offer.
Well, that was an offer, but I'm talking about trades that were agreed upon. Tekken for $6 obviously didn't happen. Brandon, you felt kind of honor bound to do it, and then I doubled the price, and then I was like, Brandon, you don't have to trade me anything. You don't owe me just because, it's all hashed out. The trade that I regret not doing because I got so caught up in your shit talking, I was like, fuck this, was we had agreed to Tekken and Helldivers when Helldivers was looking a little sketchy for World of Goo and what else was in that deal? Do you remember?
It was a flight simulator because it was kind of felt like it was like a clean across trade. I think there might have been a little bit of cash on. I think I had like $6, and then what if I remember correctly, what happened is you were on the chat talking about how like you needed the $6 to make it a worthy trade, and I told you to F off, that I was giving you better than what you were giving me, and the money was just to appease your ego. And then you're like, F this.
I canceled the trade. Well, because Helldivers was looking like a risk. Helldivers was looking like a 75 at best. It ends up dropping to an 83, and that's fine. But I was like, Helldivers is a risk. This could be bad. And as I said on a prior episode, if that were any other franchise or any other publisher outside of Sony, that game would have done a lot worse because of the way it launched. The state it launched in was so abysmal. Suicide Squad got shit on for all the same reasons a few weeks prior, but because it was Sony, everyone was like, "What? Maybe we just wait. Maybe we just wait a few weeks until they fix their game before we give it a review score." So it was kind of like, you got the best possible outcome given the circumstances, but it was a risk, and that's the way I looked at it. It was like, you're getting a good game. I'm taking the risk, so you have to overpay to ease the potential bomb that Helldivers could be. But it worked out. In my rage canceling the trade, it bit me in the ass. And what can I say?
Well, I mean, hey, it came back in your favor eventually, as EJ is now the king of Tekken, the king of the Mighty Fist tournament, or Iron Fist tournament. I don't know why I said Mighty. It's Iron Fist.
Tekken.
I did finally pry it away from
my cold dead fingers,
your clutches.
It has been fascinating to have a new player. As always, it is to have a new player. And I think that, the fallow period will come as it comes for everyone, and we'll have to weather that together, Brando. But that it's been very pleasant to have Goofy Brandon in the Discord instead of Wrestling Heel Brandon. So I really like Goofy Brandon. And Wrestling Heel Brandon doesn't translate well in a text-based medium where we can't see the shit-eating grin on your face and hear the melodic lilt of your voice as you are enjoying this work that you're doing on us. So I'm just going to say that I love Goofy Brandon's emergence, and I won't keep him.
Yeah, we want shoot Brandon, not work Brandon.
I mean, hey, to be the best, you got to beat the best. And I'm the best, so you got to beat me.
I love it. Okay. So Brandon, I'm going to just read off some things really quick because you don't have a computer screen in front of you, it looks like. So the Ramparts, through 3 months, you're sitting at 52 points with 4 games released. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of your games are counter-picked currently. You've gotten off of 2 counter-picks, so kudos to you.
Thank you.
Like a Dragon and Tekken obviously being your biggest releases of the year. Tekken you no longer have. A lot of pickups. You've spent some money. I mean, you've definitely spent some money, and you're down to $57 on the year.
And I've spent a lot more because I've done some trades where I got some money and then proceed to spend that money. I've definitely I don't know. I've come at this a weird way, and like I said, I'm trying things out and seeing kind of what works so I can better define my strategy for next year. And so one thing kind of because I'm new and because this is a whole year thing, I've got it in my mind of trying to keep things active and lively, because things were super active and super lively right at the beginning. And so I kind of took the EJ route that he did at the beginning of the year of putting up a bunch of false trades and having people bite for them. But I haven't really been thinking through the false trades so much. And so it's I've used a lot of my free drops, which probably next year I'll save more. But I mean, I think in the end, I'm still pretty decently confident that it'll all kind of line out for me, and I'll have at least somewhere in contention. I know that it'll be, we believe it'll be Chris and me in the end, just fighting for that one position. But we're coming up. We're changing. Yeah, exactly. Number 1. But it's been fun. It's been interesting trying out different things.
I have thoughts about your year so far, but I want to ask you what your strategy has been, because it seems like you've been trying different things, kind of like what you're saying. Like you took some swings in the draft, made some interesting choices, Hades 2, Sweet Coden at number 1, etc. We've hashed that out. But your pickups, early it was like, oh, I got to take swings on some indies, some potentially unreleased things, Dragon Age, Penny, Berserk Boy, etc. And then you kind of settled down, and you it seems like you kind of decided to just take things easy, and then things got busy in the league again, and you're like, oh shit, and you put out a bunch of bait bids, and you ended up with a bunch of games. You ended up with a bunch of games. So you have 2 free slots left after our last trade, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, Critmaster, Paper Trail, Children of the Sun, Sandland, and then taking the swings on the big boys with the Avowed and Stellar Blade. It seems like there's an inconsistent strategy here, and you're just kind of throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. But would you say it's fair that you see movement and you feel like I have to get in on that movement?
Yeah, there's definitely a degree of shiny lights to what I'm doing. I won't disagree with that. But so I've got 2 more free drops left, and so spoiler alert, Crypt Masters is gonna go away. But Paper Trails, I was kind of looking at, and I feel like it's gonna be one of those shocking indies. It's not gonna do amazing, but it's gonna be more like a Berserk Boy and Penny, where we came in and it's like, oh, these aren't gonna do so great, and they were middling. Penny more than Berserk Boy in the middling range, but it's the thing that I'm feeling for reviewers this year, and I could be wrong because this is all just assumption and guesstimation, is what I feel like I'm noticing is it's not so much that bad games are going to get a bad score. It's all bad games that then aren't fun get a bad score, where if a game is kind of bad or has issues like Helldivers. So the PC version didn't really work. The PlayStation was mostly fine, but it's they were quick to reply, hey, we're working on fixing this. But the game in and of itself, for the people who could play it, it was fun. Get decent scores. And so I still feel like something with Sandland. I know we're thinking Sandland's gonna squash, and it might, but it's I've saw the demo, and I've seen a bunch of people talk about the demo and saying they had, even though there's issues and there's things, but people had a lot of fun with it. And so I'm thinking it's gonna run a middling score, because it seems like right now this year that reviewers are okay, somewhere between 77 and 85 is where we put games that maybe aren't technically the best, but they're fun. We're having fun. They're not great games, but we're having fun. And in a world where every game is trying to have the best graphics and push the systems to their utmost point, it's it's kind of nice to see games that are just they're not over complicated, and they're just kind of they're here and we do stuff. We go shoot some aliens and we call it a day. Just have a little bit of fun for once.
If you average between 7 and 12 points per slot, you'll still lose to Nick by 90 points, as we saw last year. But it's been an interesting year, Brandon. I think the interaction in the Discord has been fun for the most part. I agree with Chris. Once we got over the hump and all the initial emotions and, things have settled down, it's been, I think, a lot more fun for everybody. But I like checking every week. I like seeing what's cooking. I like the trade negotiations, turning our assets into assets. This is what I get off on. But we'll talk about the trade system later. Brandon, you're in a decent spot right now. I mean, you have a lot of counterpick games, and if you start getting delays, it's really going to hurt you. But right now, 52 with 4 release games, you're right in the thick of it, and right in the thick of the projections. But, Chris, tell us about your pivot. It's been an interesting year for you. You've spent the most money, and you have made the most trades. So it has been very active for you.
I have made more trades than the rest of the group combined. I have been a part of 4 trades. And I think the cumulative number of other trades that do not involve me is 1. Yeah, I made a lot of pickups that did not have dates, at the end of the draft, even there were a lot of slots in all of our rosters, a lot of games on all of our rosters that didn't have dates. And that's been kind of the big feeling of the year, is what is actually going to release and what is not. And in a way that we know that indie games are mercurial with those release windows, it's far less likely for them to be hit. Steve put it as like a 40% chance, maybe, when we had him on talking about games without dates, especially indies. That's probably lower. But even with a lot of the AAA releases, it's like, well, we think this is coming, but there is a lot of uncertainty. But after sort of, a spate of early pickups, Nick published some data at one point, and I was like, okay, even with games with release windows that I feel like reasonably confident are going to be coming out this year, I don't have very many games with release dates. And so I started moving really aggressively to reshape my roster with more sure things and letting go of some things that I would much rather have on my roster than someone else have, just in case they do come out, but trying to translate some unknown quantities into some known quantities. And I think that's been really successful. And I think I have the most interesting roster composition of any of y'all, in that I have 5 games on my roster that I acquired in trades. I have 4 games on my roster that I acquired in pickups. And I think I'm only sitting on 4 games that I drafted. That is correct. So that is a crazy comp to me when I was looking at it this morning and going, damn, like I literally have reshaped my entire roster. So I've got a lot of stuff that now does have release dates. I think I have as many release dates as anybody on the board now. And I'm looking forward to having some things on the board because of the reshaping of things with trades. My only game that had come out was Prince of Persia. And it was nice sitting there looking at that beautiful 87. But that was a way that I could move from a game that I should have just dropped, but wanted to diamond hands, and that's fine. So I have the only game I have out now is Rise of the Ronin, which wasn't even my game. That was something EJ drafted that dramatically underperformed relative to expectation. So it's just like hilarious to me to be in the beginning of April and have -1 point between that and the Penny's Big Breakaway counter pick. But it's not because I have dead slots, and it's not because games have come out and they've been bad. It's that I reshaped everything and I had only had 1 game released to begin with. So April's going to be big for me. May's going to be big for me. Between in April, Harold Halibut and Rising Tide coming out, that's going to be Rising Tide. I mean, is going to be high 80s. I think this looks like a fucking certified hood banger in the same tier as the base game, with like a whole icon fight. They also they're balancing a lot of the other iconic abilities I saw in an interview recently. So like this is going to be like a really substantive addition to this game, and the base game scored really well and was really, really well received. So that's going to be, I think, a banger. We'll see what happens with Homeworld. Paper Mario is going to be high 8s or low 9s, and rightfully so. And then I'll feel a little bit more solid, and hopefully by then we'll also have some more first-party Nintendo news on their back half offerings, because we still don't have anything on paper for the big N after Paper Mario, basically.
Paper.
You've definitely pivoted. You've spent the most money, like we said. And the way I kind of looked at it was like, all right, you spent $60 to basically trade a bunch of decent games without dates for probably some not great games. I mean, but like things like Bow, Pass of the Teal Lotus, that could hit, but it seems risky. So, Homeworld had pretty abysmal previews. It got delayed. Could still be decent. I'm certainly not where I was with it, where I thought, oh, this is going to be like a low-key 90. Like, this is going to be a PC banger that no one expects. After the impressions, I was pretty scared. So I was good to make that trade. So it's definitely been a pivot. I definitely think you're putting probably too much emphasis on release dates, especially considering how many flyers everybody else is taking. But maybe that'll be what puts you over the top as we sit here pissing ourselves over games that won't end up coming out. You can just ride, a bunch of high 70s to the finish line if you fill all your slots. Kind of close to what I did last year, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really know what you mean by that. Bo is, I think, going to be really good and has a lot of really good buzz around it, especially given it's weird to call it a development pedigree when it's like people who are making fan games, but in the same way that like, here comes Sonic Mania. That's the best Sonic game in like 20 years and is maybe the best 2D Sonic game ever by fan developers. And the Bo folks are the AM2R devs, and people still in the Metroid groups that I'm a part of talk about that as being the best Metroid game that they've ever played.
A game famously you refuse to play because it's not a real Metroid game.
Well, my own aversion to playing things on a computer kind of kills that for me. But also, I like that. I appreciate the presence that game had for people for a long time, where it's like we don't have a good way to play Metroid 2.
It's still the best Metroid 2 that's ever been made.
That's probably true. I'm just sort of like, I'm not really interested in headcanon. Because they did the same thing that they ended up doing with Samus Returns, in that they went, okay, we have like vague sketches of areas and we have to make them into something that are more distinct. But now that we have a canonical version of what that is, I'm more interested in that than what the fan headcanon was. But I totally clearly respect what they did and know how well reputed that is. And now they're running their own show, and that excites me. But beyond that, I mean, like Harold Halibut, a ranger, I don't even know if I'm keeping that game. I've got my flyers. We'll wait and see on those. And I've also got a good number of slots and drops and a decent amount of cash, and I'm big chillin'.
Now, Chris, with your big May and April with all these games releasing, how are you feeling about another one of your counter picks releasing in that time span as well?
I don't know. We'll see. You're really excited about it. But you're also
Ayuden Chronicles?
Yeah, you're also really excited about Fantasy Life. And so I don't know if those excitements are the same excitements. And that's no tea, no shade in the things that people like. If we've learned anything in the last 3.25 years, it's that the things that we like and the things that review well are very, very different a lot of the time. I don't know. I went deep into the Reddit when I was trying to do this work on Brennan to get him to take the Ayuden counterpick, which hilariously he never really had any interest in doing.
No, and why should he have?
EJ and I ran a fake trade to try to get Brennan to activate his FOMO and force him into making a counteroffer, which he did, which was a fake counteroffer, probably because EJ went and told him that
I told you he wasn't going to fall for it. Everyone knew you and Brandon were working together. It was so obvious.
Well, you telling him exactly what was going on and also posting in the Discord about, oh, shut the fuck up. I texted Brandon. I know what you told him. Don't fucking do this to me on the air.
What did I tell him?
I will admit, because now it's done and over with, that kind of the trick in Brennan part was admittedly my idea. Chris had no part of it. He originally just wanted to give Ayuden to him and then or use it he wanted to do the trade. And then I had messaged him about how the beta was and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, it's like this beta is amazing. But I'd only talked to Chris. I'm like, you should try and see if Brennan, because admittedly, full honesty, and I'm still kind of somewhat confident in this, I think Brennan has a potential chance of walking away with this. And so I'm sitting here how do I bring Brennan down a peg? And so it's all Chris unknowingly was actually technically my pawn in trying to bring Brennan down, who I saw as the biggest threat. And so I'm sitting here lying about how I felt about the beta to everybody else. Oh man, this is so bad. It's Mighty Number 9 all over again. It did not work though. So it technically wasn't even Chris colluding with me. It was me using Chris as my pawn to take down Brennan.
Uh-huh.
Two things. One, thank you for your vote of confidence, Brandon. Two, leave the acting to Chris.
Maybe the directing too, based on how this whole Ayuden saga unfolded.
I should have. Brandon was like, I'm going to post something about it. And I should have I should have just told you to say nothing. Not because
Alarm bells.
not because I think you could do a work, maybe a little bit, but more so that you talk with such a high degree of confidence about all of your picks, regardless of their actual quality in the Discord as part of this like bit, that to have said nothing would have been more disconcerting than you coming in with that.
If Chris had come in and been like, dude, the previews are awful, and then Brandon just ignored it, that would have said a lot more than, yeah, exactly. Just the blind, irrational confidence and belligerence to suddenly being like, uh-oh, guys, this game might not be good. EJ might be right. I'm like, oh, red flag. Red flag number one.
Anyone saying EJ might be right is just, hey, I'm lying. Listen to me lie.
So we shall see. I did get really deep into the Ayuden subreddit. The devs had asked for feedback after the beta, and I was looking through, and people are generally positive about it. They're fucking Kickstarter backers, so like they kickstarted it because they want a game that's like Suikoden. So take all of the like, oh, this is great with a grain of salt, but the things that were driving them crazy, I'm kind of like, this is stuff that a reviewer that is not just really excited for a game that's not Suikoden but is Suikoden are going to not really be happy with. There's a lot of quality of life problems. It seems like a lot of sort of baffling choices, unskippable dialogue, which is definitely going to drive some people crazy, like input delays with things, the flow of combat because of the different, like literally like delays on every single menu item, taking time to get to the next menu item. And it's just things that could cause trouble. I don't know if it's going to be, stratospheric, but it'll probably start with an 8. Looking at the other counter picks, I can live with that.
So, Chris, to muddy the water more on this, I am a member of the Udine Chronicles Discord. For the beta, there is an issue and bug report. They're currently at number 474.
What does that mean?
So they've 474 different like little bugs of like either like this is a text that's not filled in, or kind of things that Chris was saying. I mean,
that seems like a totally normal amount, actually.
Yeah, for a beta,
like I said,
yeah,
muddy the water
for a released game. Even, I mean, have you played video games in the past?
I'm still playing Skyrim, and I think I've ran into
Brandon.
at least
How many
500.
typos have you found in Unicorn Overlord? Because I've seen at least like 10. So things happen.
True.
Things happen.
but they may not be as. I mean, it's the indie question, right? Like people don't tend to be as forgiving of those little things when there's not necessarily a proven track record. Fair or unfair, the bump. We talk about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It'll get an indie bump. Yeah, people will be very forgiving of small problems. And with this coming out before, well, it's kind of a double-edged sword depending on when it comes out in relation to the Suikoden remasters. I'm thinking back to, God, what was the name of that Dead Space kind of game a few years back? Callisto Protocol.
Ugh.
Being like pretty mid, but then everyone looking forward to how good Dead Space looked, and then that game getting really good reviews. I don't know if there's a similar sort of context to this, because it's going to be niche reviewers for a long JRPG. And I think that generally separates out the people that wouldn't like the game in the first place, because they're not going to spend 50 hours reviewing a game they don't like. Like, that's a waste of time. So a game like Callisto Protocol that's like 8 hours and is supposed to be mass market gets more of those damning reviews. Whereas I think Ayuden will get floated just on the basis of it being longer, it being for these people. So the people who are reviewing it are kind of already in that corner.
Unless it's Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, in which case every reviewer on fucking OpenCritic decided to play it and review it, which definitely dropped it from its otherwise pretty stellar reception in the Weeboo community. So, you never know with these things. But Brandon, I have a feeling that I'll be owing you a nice bro date.
Yeah, Grand Blue got 55 reviews. That's about the same amount as Rise of the Ronin.
Grand Blue got 96 reviews.
Top critic reviews that matter, that contribute to the score, that have numbers next to them.
That's
too.
Fair.
So trades, I've been really active. I'm going to go through these. One of them, I think we can definitively say has been decided in my favor.
Always was.
And that's the first one. Well, no, in the same way that Nick is like, until that number says 2025 or it's January 1st, 2025, it's not fair to say.
There are different levels of 2024. We all can agree on that, Chris.
Earthblade was never coming out. It never was coming out this year. I've been saying that since the trade got proposed.
This is in reference to you, Nick, saying I'm not counting unannounced 3D Mario as a 2025 game until it says 2025, which is equally as likely as Earthblade was to come out in 2024.
And we'll see if I can trade that for, 278s and come up on top with that.
we will see. 278s. Visions, maybe. Final Fantasy, that's
what would the last DLC
really
get, Chris?
Did you play the last DLC in the base game?
What did it get? That's not my question.
It was not. Well, it's not even a good comparison because this DLC. I already talked about this. You're just not listening to me.
I'll side with Chris. It's not a good comparison.
I heard you injecting hopium into it, but if you didn't have that game, you'd be also doubting it fully.
No.
Just like you were beforehand when we talked about this in the draft.
I have played these games and I know how short and not a chunk of the main game experience Echoes of the Fallen was. That was like a coda. Well, not a coda is the wrong word because it's not an epilogue, but that was like, this could have been released as one thing, honestly. But it's like, let's spread this out a little bit to maintain engagement over a longer period of time. It was a good dungeon, but it was short. It was like 2.5 hours worth of gameplay. I think this is going to be about 12-15 and introduce a new icon, which means an entirely new move set that could be added. Like I said, they've also reworked a bunch of the other iconic moves, and you can create loadouts now, like adding a bunch of like QOL stuff that people have been really hoping to have, because it does take time to rearrange all of those different like gear systems depending on what iconic set you're running. No, this one's gonna be very good. It's a good joke, but this one's gonna be very good.
Supposedly the ending of the game is also changing.
People love that when DLC adds a new ending.
I know. It was kind of the one thing that was like swaying me with like whether I kept it or not, was like after having finished 16 and whatnot, it's like I'm staring at it, I'm like, anything this DLC does is going to just ruin this ending and kind of make it sucky or make it like, they cheaped out. And then they're like, oh no, it's like if you do the DLC, like the DLC is going to happen before the ending. If you do it first, like,
yes,
the ending will change. I'm like, okay, I didn't really think about them doing that. It's all like, that works better. And then I regretted it a little bit more having traded it.
So you traded Final Fantasy DLC, Brandon, and Visions of Mana for Earthblade, and how much money? $3.
So Earthblade's not coming out. We know that now. And Mana's probably around 80, either around or a round. I think it's probably got a really small floor to ceiling range, like maybe a 5-point floor to ceiling range. I think this game is gonna be between a 78 and 83. I don't see how it goes lower than that. I don't see necessarily how it goes higher than that unless it really overachieves. But it looks like a good, solid, inoffensive entry into this series in a way that will be more engaging and true to modern game design. But then Final Fantasy is obviously the bigger one. I think that's going to be a big hit. If that's, around an 85, I could stomach a 76 from Visions of Mana. That's like a 10 or 11 point average for those two slots, which is more than I got for having to drop Earthblade. And that's great because I can't remember what I paid for Earthblade, but I think it was like $6 or $7. So if I turn the $6 from Earthblade and $3 that I threw into the trade to like a mid to high 80s and something that's in the 78 to 83 range, that's money well spent in my book. So that was the first trade. I sold Brandon Avowed for $6. We still don't have a release date for Avowed, so that's TBD for sure. God, what else did I do? Oh, there was the trade. Yeah, the trade to EJ. I sent you Rise of the Golden Idol and $5 for Homeworld 3. We still don't have a Golden Idol release date. Who knows what Homeworld's going to score? There were wildly varying responses to that, where it's like, okay, this last demo had some clear issues that they want to address. It also had a lot of things that were working really well for it that a lot of the folks in the PC gaming space were pretty excited about. So who fucking knows what's going to happen with that? And then the big one is that EJ has moved into this, and this would be a great segue to get you over talking about your roster, EJ, has moved into this strategy of trying to vacuum up dead slots by prying higher scored games away from people, which that is a strategy. So this was a big trade. This was the trade with the most moving pieces I think we've done so far. EJ took on unannounced Mario, which he has counterpicked also, which is hilarious that we did end up in that situation. Prince of Persia and Pepper Grinder for a Ranger, Rise of the Ronin, and $5 budget. Pepper and Ronin felt like lateral swaps, which is pretty much proven to be true. It's a 3-point difference. Pepper sitting at a 79. I was not high on that game at all after the demo, and I was thinking about dropping that game pre-release week. And then EJ volunteered it as being part of this exchange. I was like, great, take that. Get that off my roster. I'll take Rise of the Ronin. I don't think Pepper is going to be that much better. But the main thing was just here's a game with points in exchange for you taking on that dead slot. So I don't know. That's 10 points per slot between the 3-point difference in Pepper and Rise of the Ronin and Prince of Persia's 87 and the Mario Kart dead slot. So I don't know. I feel fine about that. I'd rather have that slot open. I still think there's not going to be a lot of stuff to be fought over that's going to be a known quantity that isn't already on the board that's going to come up. But we might get some more things that are going to see some action. And with $40 cash and 3 available places.
How many drops do you have?
Plenty.
Okay,
I think I've dropped like a game.
So you have $40 to not fill 3 slots, but potentially 8 slots, depending on how things start to shake out. So,
well, I don't think that. No, I don't think that way. Sorry, that's not part of the calculus for me at all. The games that I have on the board, I'm not, other than a Ranger, which was just like a toss in because I didn't want Metro because I knew I was going to drop it because that game's going to be a piece of shit. I might drop a Ranger. That's the only one on my board that I would drop.
Or Ender once that gets pushed to 25.
yeah, there's a lot left in the air.
Yeah, that's already into open access, and I guess I haven't really looked into like how that's going for them in the last 2 weeks or week and a half, 2 weeks. I think it came out like the 23rd or the 25th. So I haven't looked into like how that's going and the scope of work that they have in front of them, I guess. It's just kind of early for me to look over there, but yeah, I suppose that could be a drop, but even so, I don't think that there's going to be that many killer apps. I think it's going to be more us looking at stuff that gets announced that we're going to have to take flyers on. So the bidding war, like all the cash that y'all are hoarding, there may be one game per person that we look at it and go, I have to have that. I'm going to spend money on that to make sure no one else has that. And then it's going to be who wants to gamble on what stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot more like $1 to $6 bids than we are people going, oh, I'm going to spend $12 on this.
Well, I'll tell you what my philosophy is, and I had to also kind of pivot after a couple of concerning things transpired. Homeworld getting poor previews, Ronin reviewing poorly, Nick off to the races, Brandon off to the races. I've played very patiently this year, very conservatively with my money and my bids. I've tried to bait people and I've been engaged in trade talks, but I've been very patient, practicing what I preach kind of thing. And so I'm not necessarily getting the FOMO of like, oh, people are putting games on the board and people are scoring points because, again, Nick was behind everybody until the end last year. So, just because Brandon has a 60-point lead early, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So I had to look at my own projections, my own spreadsheets, which as flawed as they could possibly be or not. That's neither here nor there, but I had to just trust in my plums and look at my projections based on how I think these games will score, what I think is going to be coming out. And as I told Brandon the other day, already through 3 months, there have been 30 games that would have been eligible for our league that got 80-plus top critic scores. Plenty of games to go around, plenty of points. The fact that any of us are getting less than 80 points on anything is embarrassing. It says more about us being bad than it does about the state of the industry or reviewers or anything. While, yeah, there won't be 15 90s on the board at the end of the year like there were last year, 20 90s or whatever there were. Yeah, there are going to be plenty of games and a lot of flyers. That's fine.
That's what I was just going to say. It's not about that they're not going to be there. It's that we are not going to be able to look at them the way we could last year and go, these are going to be good. It's just a matter of who is going to get them. it's going to be a lot more unknown quantities, a lot more we're not sures, a lot more can they pull that off, a lot more
Sure.
I have a good feeling. So yes, there will be some good games, but it is not going to be as easy for us to have the kind of roster compositions we had last year and the point totals we had last year, feeling confidently that those things will happen.
I don't know about you. I didn't feel confident about jack shit last year, but I'll tell you what, there will be no more Balatro for $4. We've already seen a lot more movement, with the exception of a lot of Brandon's bait bids. We all knew some of those were going to be bad, so he got stuck with them. Nobody bit on the bait last week. But my whole pivot is about projecting. What do I think, based on what's on the board right now, is going to happen? And based on my own plums, I'm looking at Brendan and Nick out in the forefront. I'm looking at Chris and Brandon neck and neck for the mid-off, and I was feeling like I was falling in the second place, having two of my draft picks look kind of scary. And so I just started doing the calculus of like, all right, everybody has at least 2 dead slots. I'm reasonably confident. Nick has at least 1 for sure, probably 2 with Indiana Jones. Brandon's board's a complete mess that we can dive back in on if we decide to. And despite a really unprecedented start, again, 2 of the highest scoring games in franchise history back-to-back on the same day, like crazy. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Brandon, if you thought that was going to happen, it was a completely uninformed take, and the fact that it paid off is like incredibly lucky. Good for you. That's good. But there are a lot of other poor decisions, and I'm banking on. I'm betting against you. I'm betting against Chris. I'm betting against the decisions Nick and Brendan are going to make, despite what I think is a much stronger board position. So I said, listen, I'll take 2 dead slots. If Brandon and Chris and Nick are, as I'm projecting, going to have 2 dead slots, then if I can get a bunch of known quantities on the board, so I made a bunch of trades. I went from 6 points to 57 points. So with the same number of games released as Brandon and Nick, I'm 10 points behind Nick and I'm 5 points ahead of Brandon with 2 projected dead slots. Well, my slots are guaranteed dead. Again, I'm betting against, it is a flyer. It is risky. I'm taking a chance. But if everything kind of goes chalk, I think I have completely pivoted from like what turned out to be what I thought was a really solid draft to less solid as things played out. Completely pivoted to being right back in the thick of things. And if those 2 dead slots cost me in the end because Nick picks up a bunch more fucking Balatros, that's just the way of the world. But being right back in the thick of it without having to give up my top 2 draft picks, which I did try to move in further trades, but I still have 2 potential 90s on the board, 90 plus, 30 points in Elden Ring potentially. Like, I feel really good about being only 10 points behind Nick with the same number of releases. And at this point, it's just a waiting game. If Indiana Jones comes out, it's a different year. I mean, I'm playing risky. I feel quite good about the pivot. And if it bites me, I'll be the first to admit the pivot didn't work. But right now, I went from like definitely last place to like, all right, projections, we're neck and neck. We're back at the top. Like, let's see how things play out. Again, my top 2 picks. If Rift gets a release date, like, I feel good about my pickups. Metro was a flyer. I can drop it, not a big deal. But I feel good about World of Goo. I feel good about Golden Idol if it comes out. Again, a flyer. And you kind of broke that down, Chris, your thought process there. I don't disagree with your evaluation of it. Like, yeah, it could easily get delayed. I took the L and Pepper Grinder. The previews, all the official previews were really positive. A lot of the people who played the demo on Reddit or whatever the fuck, or the fucking Fantasy Critic server, which I'm learning that all of those people, very few of them know what the fuck is going on. But then again, very few of us know what the fuck is going on. So they are our people in that respect. But I cannot listen to their opinions.
We are kindred souls.
Right. I cannot listen to them say, oh, I didn't like the Pepper Grinder demo. Then it gets an 89. And it's like, oh, this random fucking person I've never met just ate crow on this. So I can't look at that.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that's kind of a bad game, right?
Yeah, I don't put any stock into that the way I think some other people in this chat might be doing this year. I saw the 7 out of 10 Pepper Grinder review. I was pretty confident that would have been enough to get you to move off it, Chris, and I bet high on it. Yeah, I turned into 3 extra points over Ronan.
And you also gave me no modicum of credit that you assumed wrongfully that this was just an instance of me going, oh my God, 3 people over in Fantasy Critic said they didn't like the demo. Now Chris is panicking, where I'm like, no, this has looked bad since they since the Next Fest demo. This has not looked like this was
It's
going
an
to
80.
be.
It's a fucking perfectly good game. It's not a bad game. It's not a banger for Fantasy Critic.
Well, yeah, 79 is fine. I'm not trying to have 7s in front of my games. Like, that's not going to win. Especially this year.
That's
like,
why you traded Pepper for Ronan, right?
I traded Pepper for Ronan because I feared it could have been even lower than that, first of all, but also that was a way you wanted to get off of Ronan as a way of getting the Mario slot, or you wouldn't have offered it. I'm like, okay, so that's part of this then. I could have been like, no, let's just do Prince of Persia and Mario for a Rager straight over or something like that, but it felt contingent. That to me was just a lever to get that trade to go to open that slot. But I had been wanting to move off of that game, and you presented an opportunity for me to do it. That was not a spur of the moment decision. It was not a which way's the wind blowing decision. That was an active decision.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I take the L on it. I'll take an 80 all day. But I mean, it was kind of similar to when we looked at that first Berserk Boy review, got a 4 out of 10, and we were all making fun of Brandon, and then it gets a fucking 83 or whatever. So I was like, I'm not going to worry about one random foreign review giving it a 7 out of 10. I'm going to, I think the game looks good, and I think my opinion of the game was spot on. And I always thought, yeah, it's going to be an improvement over Ronan. But again, yeah, that was really just sort of the add-on to get the 17 points from Prince of Persia, being the known quantity. And so, yeah, I'll easily trade the dead slot for, what is that, 26 points? Feels reasonable to me. So anyway, that's been kind of my strategy. It's been my year. Like I said, I've been conservative. I picked up Animal Well. I picked up World of Goo and Metro. And I picked up Braid Anniversary Edition in my flex slot. So it's been a quiet year. I still have, I think, the most cash, for whatever that's worth, $75.
By $4.
Yeah, so
cash by $4.
I had to spend some cash in those trades to make the movements that I was moving on. But yeah, I feel good. And I ended up with Tekken. I had to take Hades 2 for it. I also think as a flyer, looking at a lot of the dead slots on this board, I think Hades 2 could still potentially come out this year. I don't think that has 2 years. It's not coming out this year, but I'm just saying this game could come out and be done and take 3 months of feedback and then release by holiday. It could, it won't. But this doesn't need 2 years in the oven after how many years of development the way the first game needed, right? Like, they know what they're doing. So it's also, that was sort of like the copium I was huffing of like, all right, I'll take the dead slots. Mario Kart's for sure not coming out, but I'll huff this copium to make it go down a little easier. But again, after running the numbers, I feel really good. 4 games released, 10 points behind Nick, same amount of dead slots. Now I just have to bet against the person who's won 2 years in a row and hope his pickups suck. Probably not going to happen, but I might get lucky with a Blatcher of my own. We'll see what happens. That's me, Brennan.
Hello.
Thanks for listening for the last hour.
I'm here.
You came in with one fucking zinger. You killed. And then you went right back.
Slip away into the night. Just like my dad.
No!
Oh,
no,
dang.
Brennan.
Oh, no.
Brennan.
I wrote a song
Buddy.
about it. Go listen to Sleep Aids.
What's your year been like, man? You're top of the heap.
Getting there. I still, I don't know if we've done a pod since Bellaccio came out, but I'm still
Reeling.
Still nightmares. Losing that game by $1. I had it in my hands, and
Brandon.
I dropped it down to 4.
You
And
changed your bid.
An hour.
Oh,
before the bids
It's so
went through.
funny. I absolutely love when people pay the same amount of money for a game, but someone paid it first, and that's what is the breaker. Like, I love that. So the fact that we both went for $4 for this poker roguelike, I'm like, you know what? People are high on it. People are talking about it on Twitter. They're very happy. Great Steam reviews.
The thing is, so I did buy it, and I played it for maybe 8-ish hours or so. It's a good game. It is not a 92, and it's exactly what I was scared of, and why I dropped my bid down was because of the replay value. Like, you think of games like Inscription or something, this roguelike deck builder, and you have this story, this lore that really pulls you through the game, and you get into it, and then it's just poker. That's all
just
it is.
poker.
And you're trying to, you can break the game in really cool ways, but it was such a zeitgeist that everyone's like, this game's out, super high on it, really good scores.
Only the sickos played it too. Like you talked about, Nick, with the anime games. It was like all the deck builder sickos played it. It was the first one of the year. It definitely got bumped up. And listen, I know, Brennan, you're just salty about it, but you play all of these deck building games. Like, this is your thing.
Yeah, they're fun. It's good. I'm just salty that I don't have fucking 92 points on my board.
The fact that we're sitting here, like, Brennan, you got so up in your fucking head about $1. You're like, oh, I got to drop this to $4 from $5.
I know.
Like, what do you do? It's $5.
I know.
Oh, buddy.
The economy this year has been a lot different than last year, right? Not Brandon, he wasn't in the league last year. Chris set the tone real quick last year about bidding like $8, $9, $10 a game. And that
escalated quickly.
It escalated really quickly. And so far this year, we've we've gotten away with some good games. Obviously, $4.
Only one bid over $10, and it was, of course, Chris bidding on a game that won't come out this year. But it's been a very different economy. People have been playing scared because Nick preached patience, and we all were like, we got to be patient. And then, of course, that starts to unravel. It's been a complete, it's been chaos. But
I've definitely been playing the patient game. I've still got 6 open slots. I've missed out on a couple bids that I won. I'm not super, sad about it. I am sad that I missed out on Bo. I think that's going to be a pretty good game, actually. Really good Metroidvania. I got Turbo Kid, though. We'll see how that is.
Yes. The bike Metroidvania.
Dude,
Brennan.
Synthwave.
It could hit. It's weird. It's a weird space to be like a sequel to a shitty Mega Man movie, basically, from the late 2000s, early 2010s. Like, here's a sequel to that in video game form. Like, who asked for that? Like, I don't.
It's money laundering is what it is.
Well, no, it's people. It's such a. I did watch the movie too, by the way. After I picked it up. Yeah, it's a terrible movie.
Oh my God.
It's a terrible movie. But I watched it. It's on Amazon Prime. Go watch it.
I'm so excited for this game, though. Movie fucking sucks.
I saw the gameplay and it looks fucking rad. It looks super fucking rad. BMX, killing bad guys, like the traversal looks awesome. Like there's more upside than downside, I think. I mean, the downside's that it gets a 65, so.
Listen.
Benedict Fox.
Bids on Turbo Kid, but CP's Berserk Boy.
Yeah, let's talk about Berserk Boy, Brennan.
He's leaning
that
into
game
it.
looks really fucking bad. It looks really bad. I don't want to play it, but these nerds like that shit, okay?
Sometimes, other times.
They normally don't.
know.
I ain't no nerd.
Brandon, you are the nerdiest of us all, buddy.
Proudly so. Wear it, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Bayonetta of last year, thorn in my side. There's not much to say about it. It scored decently. Thankfully, it's come down a little bit, but
It was a shock to us all. I mean, again, another universally panned decision on Brandon's part, miraculously working out. Pretty shocking. You have the highest scored game of the year in Final Fantasy Rebirth. We had talked before the draft that it felt like Final Fantasy Rebirth was probably always going to be the number one pick based on the slate ahead of us, but it felt like in previous years you had your God of Wars, you had your Zeldas, like you had 30 plus bangers right off the rip. It felt a little uncertain this year. Number one pick turned out to be number one pick. It was Michael Jordan, not Sam Bowie. So
thank God.
That was a number 2 pick and number 3 pick, but the point stands, okay?
Listen, Silk Song is coming out this year, all right? It's happening. It has an Xbox page now.
Just like Hades 2 is coming out this year.
Yes.
Was Hades
definitely.
2 rated by the ESRB in South Korea, Brandon?
Hollow Knight
Was it?
is for sure coming out, okay? And I tried my damnedest to pry this away from Brennan in a trade last week, betting on this coming out, and Brennan was just like, he was right there until Nick came in with some fucking heat
All of us were like, no, this is not an equal risk reward proposition for both of you. No one but you thought that.
Actually, Chris literally said this is the most balanced trade we've had so far, and then came into the text chat and completely changed it.
Well, I went, okay, this makes sense, but like literally if I'm looking at the shuffling of pieces, but then I went, why are we even including these games? Like, why is there this whole flight sim Silksong swap? And that to me tipped off, I need to think about this package differently. I see what's going on here. This does no longer make sense to me that like this stuff is a part of this.
There was no flight sim. It was Elden Ring and Suikoden counterpick for Silksong, Dragon's Dogma, the Berserk Boy counterpick, and then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah, I was like, why
An
two
absurd combination?
Yeah, why two high-scoring games? We don't need that.
Why two
piece.
90s?
Why Elden Ring if
for
this
this
is about
crap?
the dead slot? Like, yeah, I was like, this is goofy. I was like, this is goofy.
The thought behind it was I'm taking Brendan's -12. I'm taking a couple of sure things. I'm taking what I was considering for him and projecting as being a dead slot. Hey, if Hollow Knight gets delayed, it's counterpicked, you're fucked. So I'll take the potential dead slot. You give me some sure things. I'm giving you, some unknown quantities, as we like to say. But like Elden Ring, Brendan thinks that's going to be the highest scored game of the year when it's all said and done. So I'm like, all right, you're getting probably more value in return. I incur the risk. You're giving up some known quantities for some unknowns. But like, again, if everything goes chalk, you probably win the trade. And I've pivoted substantially here. So it's probably a win-win. If Hollow Knight comes out, it's going to feel bad, but the points are probably all going to come out in the wash, so it's not going to end up mattering anyway. So I think it was a low-risk proposition for Brendan based on all of our projections. Not that there aren't risks involved. Elden Ring could fucking Dark Souls DLC and get an 85.
I don't think it was low risk for me, which is obviously why I didn't do it. Like, you're taking literally my only games and the best games of the year. And I really wasn't getting much. Like, I was getting 12 points off. Like I said, I've said this over and over. Like, yes, Berserk Boy counterpick sucks, but it's only 12 points, and I have so much room to grow from that. And like everybody else has counterpicks too. Like, some of them are better than others because Brandon drafted Hades too and gave people free picks. But Metroid Prime isn't coming out this year, Chris.
A lot of confidence in these takes. Oh, boy.
Elden Ring getting above a 90. We'll see for the DLC. I don't know.
It's not false confidence. Like,
Elden Ring
it's-
88. Calling it now.
Yeah, I think that's totally cromulent.
I mean, that's certainly what the last Dark Souls DLCs got, so congratulations for using Google. Elden Ring was a monolith in video game culture.
It could be a 30-point game, Brennan. I'm taking some risk here too, Brennan. Could be a 95, Brennan.
If the DLC, a full story DLC to the biggest game of the last 7 years gets anything less than a fucking 90, like, that is shameful for FromSoft. Have been 2.5 years, plenty of time to cook up a proper expansion to this world.
I'm sure it's going to be great. Old Hunters was great. Old Hunters was fantastic. There was no faults with that DLC, but what did it score?
What did it score? I don't know.
I think it's got like an 85 or something like that. It is not even close to what Bloodborne got.
87.
86.
If this game doesn't review well, or if this DLC doesn't review well, it will be a fucking shock.
Yeah, and it's going to be great because you're not going to be able to trade it off for something better because you want to. So you're going to be complaining on Twitter, and we're all going to get to watch that and really enjoy you DMing people who reviewed the game poorly.
You also got to think about it this way. Like, game critics, as much as we'd like to believe they have integrity, they like what they like, and they're going to have their opinions that they're going to have. And with this year kind of being a little bit, like EJ was saying last year, where there was 90s off the rails, and this year being a little bit more middling, and then you guys got games like Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones. It's all like, when you get something like the Elden Ring DLC and whatnot, something that, it's for an awesome game, in a year like this, the score might be inflated a bit because it's also, because when you're building your review, you're reviewing it against everything else that's been coming out around it, and it's going to look so much better because everything else has been worse or middling. And just to help EJ a little bit, he deserves a little bit backup every now and then.
No, he doesn't.
Brent, did you play the Dark Souls 3 DLC?
I don't know. I think I did. It was so long ago. I know I played Old Hunters. I've played the original Dark Souls DLC, Artorias of the Abyss. And then I've played like 1 or 2 Dark Souls 2 DLCs.
I only ask because Dark Souls, obviously, and their DLC packages have been a little bit different. Dark Souls 3, they split it into 2 pieces.
Right.
And the first piece was, I think, just as good as the second piece, but the first piece got a 71.
Oh, wow.
And the second piece got an 81. Like, it is just, I don't know why there's such a huge difference between the base game and the DLC with these franchises.
Yeah.
It's just very strange.
It turns out that these masochists who love these games, it turns out they like the pain more than they actually like the games. And when they get a DLC that isn't nearly as much meat on the bone, and they're like, this isn't enough pain, bad. They're not reviewing the game. They're reviewing how much they suffered while playing it. Because you have to be sick in the head to play a game like this. And I know you guys are sickos, okay? I know you're sickos.
Chris is turning into a sicko now, so welcome.
I've got a little bit of a cough today. I'm feeling the sicko starting to seep into me. Pretty soon it'll be a full-blown fever. I beat literally the first hard boss, I think is the way that Nick put it, like the fucking bell gargoyles. Like, I beat them. I felt like a god. I was just yelling in the living room and fist pumping. And literally jumped off the couch, was like, I gotta go text Nick, and like ran back into the bedroom to grab my cell phone. Was like, yes!
You're rocking the helm now, right? Because that's what you get for beating the boss. It's like a trophy. Every time I beat the bell gargoyles, I'm like wearing their hat for at least 4 hours until I find something better.
I don't think I got a hat. You said like wear the hat, and I went, I don't think I got that. What is the name?
I don't think it's a soul trait. Is it a soul trait item, Brandon? I don't think it is. It's like the winged helmet.
I don't remember. It's been quite a bit since I've played.
Is that
I think it's a guaranteed drop? Yeah, pretty sure.
You need to go find the big hammer guy with the tooth hammer. Get that.
Oh yeah, go find Havel.
Yeah.
The Rock.
Anyway, I digress.
Well, we saved the best for last. Team Barry. When others speak, they usually lie. Scrutinize and question them relentlessly until they reveal their deceit. You really chose well with that one, Nick.
Especially with all the trade negotiations happening, people firing off, spouting off, left, right, and center.
Ugh.
Here I am, holding true, holding to my ideals, knowing my value, knowing my worth, knowing what's on the bench and what it takes to get them off them.
Whoa. Holding your ideals. I thought you preached patience, and you only have 2 open slots left. Where's patience there?
Yeah, and 6 drops.
Yeah, I got a ton of drops. As soon as something moves or I feel less confident in a game, I can drop that whenever I want.
Yeah, Nick's got money and 8 open slots. Think of it that way, Brandon. He's got options. He's preached patience, but also flexibility. And he is, run us through your board. It's not a surprise.
Buddha only waits 3 times, okay? I can be patient, but I also have to know when opportunity is knocking, when to open the door. My team, as it stands right now, let me get back to the page. So I've had 4 games released, like you said, EJ, same as you. All of mine, not ill-gotten gains, but honestly purchased and drafted.
Wow. Ill-gotten gains.
I'm still happy because even if I consider Indiana Jones a dead slot, which I don't, I think that game's still coming out. If it is, in fact, 6 games with a 67, then I'm still sitting on 11 points average, which ain't too bad. I'm pretty okay with that. If I can keep it above 10, that's like I'm floating, you know?
It's not your 16 points per slot or whatever the fuck you had last year, but it's good.
I think it ended up being about 13 or 14. Yeah, definitely, floated up because of Metroid, but I'm getting floated up because of Blatra right now, so like that's fine. I've got a few games coming out soon. Senua's Saga, I believe, is May, right? And then another Crab's Treasure is late April. I think that game's going to overperform your expectations, EJ. I know you've outwardly said that it does not look like it's appealing. I don't know what that means for your own personal spreadsheet and what you actually value it in your head, or if it's floated because I'm the one holding it, which I think it definitely does.
You're really fucking me up by doing things that, I'm sitting here like, really? You picked up Bo and the Teal Lotus in favor of 9 souls, and Nick snatched up 9 souls? Well, there's a reason he didn't bid on Bo, but he snatched 9 souls up really fucking quick. And I'm just letting that completely skew my opinion of everything.
I bid on Bo.
You're in my head.
I just didn't bid $9 or whatever Chris went for.
Yeah, that's fair.
Did you bid on Turbo Kid too?
Yeah.
Oh,
That makes,
God.
that makes me feel better.
Oh,
That makes me feel
God.
Yeah, there
better.
you go.
Oh, no.
Fuck you, EJ.
I was the initial bid on it. I was like, I put a real bid on that and like a couple $1 bids out there, you know, see what happens. And then, yeah, I think Turbo Kid was like a $2 bid, but you know, whatever.
Wow. Damn. You guys are shaking me to my foundation right now.
We got him, boys. We got him.
EJ trying to get with his dead slot acquisition tirade, trying to get my unannounced mainline 3D Mario and Balatro for $7 and Metro VR, a game he desperately wants to drop, but is trying his darndest to turn into actual points, was very funny to me. So I appreciate the attempt.
Well, listen. Obviously, I'm overvaluing dead slots. Everyone else is. I think you're undervaluing a dead slot, but also you're averaging the most per slot right now, so you don't have a reason to move off of that yet. So, you know, I tried. I was hoping to start high, give you a laugh, and was hoping you were going to counter me, but then you just countered me with another fucking bad fake trade just to tell me to fuck off, basically. So, you know, I tried.
Essentially, yeah.
I tried.
Yeah. It would have been a fair trade, I think.
Your dead slot for my 17 points?
And my 24 points. And it's not a dead slot yet. It could still come out.
No.
Just like Hades 2.
Unannounced mainline 3D Mario platformer. Honestly, if that's the only unannounced game that comes out this year and it's on your board, I can't say on this podcast what I will do, but it will be bad. You guys will be down a co-host.
EJ, you'll still be happy because that'd be minus 30 on Brandon's board. So
That would feel pretty good.
take joy from that.
Okay, all right.
I don't know. I did want to say earlier, I know you mentioned it very briefly in passing about the projected points. And boy, you cannot be looking at projected points.
Not their projected points. My
Okay.
projected points. My spreadsheets. I do not look at their projected points at all because that's all fake and dumb and means nothing. Less than nothing.
Okay, so then I don't know if you have any of this actually on hand, but your predicted scores for these games, you are missing a lot of data. I even asked you, like, hey, what was your prediction for this game? What was your prediction for this game? You're like, oh, I didn't do a prediction for that. So it's like, are you just trying to juice the numbers based on the things you feel confident on? Is that like why you're missing predictions? Or is it just like you just don't care enough? You don't have the tenacity and the willpower to actually put predictions on every game in our
No, the
league?
last round of bids at the whatever that last thing was, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games that I did not have predicted scores in for. So that's what we were talking about. I think off air last time we were talking about some of these. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like 5 missing things just because I got lazy with my spreadsheets.
Yeah, I like to keep track of my predictions because it gives me a good idea of my confidence level of what I believe is on my board, what is on my opponent's boards. I'm keeping track of how wrong I am, which I am definitely more wrong this year than I was last year. It is a shaky year. I thought Balatro was like an 81. I gave $4 to an 81, and I ended up with a 92.
That's crazy.
Brennan, I'm sorry. It happens, but I don't think either one of us thought it was going to be a 92, or else we would have put a lot more money on it.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like these unsung heroes can just like come out and boom or bust. And we haven't had that much busting going on. Busting makes you feel good, but Penny wasn't as much of a bust as we were all kind of assuming. Rise of the Ronin was a little bit of a bust. I think Koei Tecmo games are like, oh yeah, that's a 75 or an 82. Like it kind of peaks there, unless it's Neo for some reason. Like I don't even know why Neo gets above an 85. Like those games are fine, whatever. But I think we're doing pretty good on the whole. We were talking about how much we're spending on games. This year we're averaging about $4 on our pickups. Last year we averaged at the end, which is, you know, a skewed number, but we averaged $7 on bids last year. That was after some big pickups late in the year, like EJ getting Mario RPG for $19. I got a couple games for about $17. So like that drags up the average. I don't know. Like we do still have a lot of games that don't have dates. I know, Chris, you were talking about how you wanted to move on to having more actual dated games. By my count, like obviously it's not all equal. I memed on you to say like until it has an actual date, it's not dated. There's some like spring 2024s that are like, yeah, that's probably coming out this year. But as far as dated games, EJ's got 8, Brennan's got 7, Chris, you also have 7, I have 9, and Brandon has 13.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, that's different based on how many slots we have actually filled, how many games have already come out. EJ has acquired a lot of his dated games by getting games that are actually out. But most of those were also with the the caveat of having something that's never coming out or not coming out this year, at least.
Right. I think we need to discuss the future of the 2024 league, a couple of potential changes moving forward. But so far through the first quarter, there has been an unprecedented amount of movement. And for the most part, has been fun. There were some early frustrations. But I think as a whole, it's been a lot of fun. And it's been interesting, for sure. But as we look to the future, the next 3 quarters, do we want to potentially make some changes? And I can float a couple of ideas out there. But I think it comes down to needing a consensus. How much of a curveball do we want to throw in moving forward? And what do those curveballs look like? So let's start with the big thing, the trade system. I don't know everyone's thoughts on it, but I think that there's been some rumblings that it may be making things less fun than maybe they otherwise would be, both because of the deception and not being able to talk about certain games. But it's been a lot to sort of deal with on a weekly basis. So I guess I'll just start by saying I like the trade system. I would love to kind of keep things how they are. I like the fuckery, the tomfoolery, if you will. I want to get everyone's opinions on it because I think that there is a discussion to have about whether we move the trade deadline up like mid Q2. Do we just agree to abolish trades completely? Do we do like a 2-week a roundup because the trade deadline sort of factored into people's decision making? Do we sort of we move the deadline way up to essentially give us the last 2 quarters, the last 2.5 quarters, whatever, without trades, so that we can kind of settle down, mellow out, and enjoy just talking shit about our bad bids, right? So I don't know, Nick, what do you think about how trades stand? I know you didn't want to do trades initially, and maybe that's bearing out for you and why you didn't want to do trades, but what do you think?
Yeah, the high drama of the early year gave me a little bit of confidence in my previous take. But no, trades are totally if you want to participate in them, you can. You don't have to. No one's can't force a trade. So from that aspect, I am indifferent to whether we keep or remove them. Just through, I don't want to make changes mid-season. I think that changes the calculation on what you want to do. It changes strategies too much. It's kind of a rug pull as far as, oh, I was doing this for the first 3 months and now I have to change. I have to pivot in a way that is unforced. We don't have to change. Why would we change? Why would we add or remove options this far in? If we're going to do anything, take note of it, and we can talk about it at the end of the year when we're starting 2025, because I do not want to make big changes. Trade, if you don't want to do trades, just don't do trades. You just don't have to. So it is a personal sort of choice, in my opinion, if you want to participate, if you want to inflate the value of your own roster by lying or pretending like you think they're worth something, or pretending like they're not worth something because you're trying to pull a sneaky on someone. That's totally up to you and the way we've been playing. I'm fine with that.
I guess for me, and again, as overwhelmingly enjoying trades and the whole process and the games that kind of come with it, is I don't like the bad feelings. If people are feeling like, oh, this isn't fun, or I wish I could talk about these things, I didn't always have to be putting on a front, that is a big deal, and I think would be worthy of making a change if there is an overwhelming majority, right, of these feelings. I think that would be worthy of a change. It would change the strategy, but that's the fun of this whole thing. More interaction, more better, right? It would force us to change, but that could be fun without garnering maybe as many negative feelings. I also don't want to get to a point where someone makes a bunch of trades and they end up winning because of it, and then it's just sour and the whole year is a wash. The next year we're getting rid of it, and it's well, if we don't think this is a long-term thing, maybe it should be reevaluated. But Brendan, how do you feel about where things are at right now?
I think the trades, it's fine. I don't really participate. I think it's fun to make fake trades where I take the entirety of Chris's roster and give him Turbo Kid.
So I don't know, Chris. Am I getting the sense that the whole trade system is the altering it this early as a non-starter, or how do you feel?
I'm not sure. I don't want to do it next year. Even though I've used the system more than anybody else, I still stand by some of the stuff that I've said publicly and privately, that it's just I just had a great way occur to me of how to phrase this. We want to drive engagement, right? I am engaging with fantasycritic.net a lot more, and I am engaging with Nick, EJ, Brandon, and Brennan a lot less. And that's the kind of engagement that I care about, not engaging on a website. And the reason why it's happening is exactly what we talked about, that, you could say, well, I'm an open book. I'm talking about this, that, and the other, and I'm being really transparent. But we know that's not true, because everybody, if you're going to be involved with the trade, you're doing it in a way that you think you're going to be able to win that trade, because you value the things that are being traded differently than the other person. And that if you're transparent and you're like, yeah, I don't think this game, I'm worried about this game, I don't know if it's going to be very good, nobody's going to trade for that game. So I'm talking with you guys a lot less about everything that's not released, basically, which is not the way that I want to do things most of the time. And I don't feel like I really have a choice in the matter, or I'm going to get left behind in a system where it is encouraged for us to not be transparent about the value of our respective assets. And, we joke like, Nick's not engaging with, the trade thing, because he's very like stoic. He's like, diamond hands as fuck. And he's like keeping it really close to the chest. Nick talks about the games that are on roster most of the time. And I feel like he's talking a lot less this year. So I don't know if he's feeling similarly, or if I'm maybe misremembering the way that Nick has communicated in previous years about stuff. But I don't know. It just, I don't know if I'd go far enough as to say we should get rid of it, but maybe we can talk about moving the trade deadline up a lot more, because that's not an abolition. That is a date we have not even set yet. And so we can make that choice, then it goes away, and then there can be more transparency and communication for the rest of the year. So maybe that's an option, that we want to move it to like July or
July 4th.
America's birthday.
We could move it up to the end of Q2, but again, I'm kind of with you, Chris, on the sense that like it can sometimes be annoying that it feels like whenever I'm getting a text from somebody, it's working an angle, and I've definitely felt that way with you and Brandon overwhelmingly, pretty much through the entire year. And sometimes that's fun because I want to engage like that, and that's totally cool. And sometimes it's just annoying, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. So like, yeah, if that is wearisome for people, it needs to be reevaluated, not 9 months from now,
No, it is. And that's exactly it, right? That it's like, I get a message from you about like, hey, I have a thought on a trade, and I'm just immediately like, where's the poop, Ted? Like, I know that listen, there is. No, I look.
I'm an open book.
Stop being defensive. No, you're not. And when I say that, it's not an attack on your character. It's the nature of the game. Like, fucking stop saying that. It's not honest. And that's part of it too, is that you're trumpeting like, well, I'm being open in my communication. Oh, except for you two specifically all the time. And then also except for when I'm trying to make a trade with someone, because they don't need to know the way I'm valuing the thing. So like, no, it's not. It's not. And it's not fun for me to think that every time I get a text, I just want to fucking talk about these games. I just want to talk about these games, including like the apprehensions I may have about them on my own roster, but I can't. Because then if I want to work a deal later, I've got no leverage. So I would wholly support moving the trade deadline, or literally getting rid of it midstream. Honestly, I really would. And I know that that's not the feeling that Nick is having, and I want to respect that. And I don't want to be like, I think we should bring it to a group vote. But this is just not the way that I like to engage with this.
I agree with what you're saying, because like, especially when you were talking about like trying to get rid of my Berserk Boy trade and get rid of your Ayuden Chronicle trade. Like when I would see those texts, I was just like, I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to like, feel like I'm not engaging with this. But I had those feelings too. So I can definitely echo that sentiment.
And isn't it more fun to do it in the Discord too, instead of like the private text and release the screenshots and all that stuff? Like,
and also EJ is saying, what's it going to take for you to take 2 dead slots?
You tell me.
It's going to fucking take a lot. I told you wouldn't like it. And you're like, well, let's be real here.
Well, don't be a pussy. Offer me something. You didn't even offer me anything. Like, that's the game.
You're like, no, because you said, but not Elden Ring. Not Elden Ring. But anything else. Elden Ring.
Yeah, because that's me.
Getting delayed. It's not coming out. 2025, bitch.
It is absolutely coming out this year. I don't. Why are people saying this? Because it doesn't have a date that's not coming. Anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Chris. I think if we look at how some things played out last year, I mean, trades has definitely amplified it, but there was plenty of private texting and trying to work angles and pretend this thing or that thing and the other thing. It's like it's not really that much different. It's just more. So it's like on one hand, yeah, it is more. If you don't like playing that way, I understand. It's kind of how you played last year too, but maybe it's just because of how amplified it is. It feels different, and that's fair. Brandon, what do you think? Where are you at?
I think the little tizzy that just had kind of like that we just had just kind of like really exemplifies everything. I mean, I don't want to like repeat Nick and Chris a whole bunch because I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I'm feeling the same way. Like it's a game and I will engage with the game systems as they are. And so it's all like I can take trading or I can leave trading, and that's fine. And I will admit, I mean, I already did earlier that I engaged in some practices that are unbecoming of my normal character. And also, back at EJ, every time I get a text from EJ, I also feel the same of like, what is EJ pulling? I feel EJ's texted me more about trades and trying to pull things than I have. And like telling him any info, I'm like, who is he texting and what are they telling him that's slightly different than what I'm saying to kind of work an angle?
I am apt to withhold information, but 9 out of 10 times I am being completely upfront about this is how I actually feel about the trade. Here's how I feel it could go for either of us. Withholding information is one thing. I am rarely being like just blatantly facetious and being like, this thing that I obviously believe is not true might be true for you. Like, I'm very just forthcoming with a lot of these things. When I'm texting you about something, I'm not trying to work you, Brandon. I'm having a grown conversation about, here's my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts? And everyone's so defensive automatically because other people are more apt to act that way. That they're like, well, he must be also doing the same thing. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm not telling you the whole truth, but like these are my real thoughts, and they were almost always my real thoughts, for better or worse, and a lot of times worse, as we're finding out this year. So,
I am an open book. I do not disclose the whole truth. These are very disparate sentiments that you're sharing.
Okay,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It comes to the parts that, yeah, maybe you're being honest, but it's the parts you're leaving out. It's like, who are you talking to about other stuff and this? And I'm not saying like any of this. Like, you want to win, and you're a very smart person, and so you have ways of going about this. But like the other point that I was trying to get to when I was talking about being unbecoming is like what Chris was saying about engagement. I made a very unbecoming decision to try and use a Udian to try and take down Brennan because, like I said, I thought Brennan has a really good chance of winning. But in all honesty, the thing I really wanted to do was I wanted to talk about this beta on the Fantasy Critic of what I was playing and how I felt and how like excited I am for this game after playing this beta and how much it reminds me of the other of Suikoden 1 and 2 and Summon to 3. It's all like, but it's like, no, it's like I had to do this ruse of that. I mean, I'm the one who I put myself into this hole, so I'm not like blaming anybody for it. It was me who chose to do this, but like I have to terribly lie about what I actually thought. And so it's like Chris was saying about engagement. I think without the trade system, we pick what we pick and it's there. And so we can just talk about games and what we're seeing about these games. But also, like I said at the beginning, it's a game. And if the trade system's a part of the game, I'll interact with it the way that it needs to be interacted with. And that's fine because I'm choosing to play this game that includes that.
So as we talk about this, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, it would be too late to implement something that I'm thinking of right now. But what I'm thinking is a lot of the other systems that we engage with that are the risk reward systems, they are primarily like it only affects our roster until it's a counter pick. And then that's a really hard thing to like change. Last year we tried doing super drops and we agreed that that was just more of like a get out of jail free card and didn't feel like an interesting wrinkle. Counter picks, you cannot drop a counter pick because we have counter picks locking opponents' games. So it would be difficult to balance a way that we would be able to drop a counter pick and then let the other person drop the game like instantly. You know, it gets a little bit weird. What I'm thinking is there are limits on our drops, on our roster, on what we can bid on. There's like a hard limit. We only have 6 drops this year. We had like 4 last year, I think, 3 or 4. But we don't have a limit right now on trades. We've talked about a deadline, but that's not like a numerical quantity. You could do as many trades as you wanted up until that deadline. I think it would be interesting if next year we talk about this, if we wanted to do trades, like limit the number of games you can trade, take out the budget thing altogether. I don't think that is really interesting personally. I think that could be a way that we could make trades implemented and then matter a lot more if you had 3 trades that you could do throughout the entire year, 3 games that you could trade. You could do it all in one. You could do it, split apart 3 different trades. But I think that would be a way we could implement it. I don't know if that's something we could even do this year because it's been kind of hairy and kind of weird.
And that also doesn't change the way that we are valuing or discussing our assets. So I don't know if that's like a total solution.
It would limit it. And then it would also be like, oh man, I got my 3 trades done. And then you could like drop the guys and that could be like a fun reveal. Like, oh, we can't trust this person because they still have a trade left and they might be blowing it out of proportion with this one. Like that could be a funny way to like still engage. If we still wanted to do it, if there was still enough pushed for them, but as it stands, it feels like there's not really enough to even want to keep them for next year. But like, how do we deal with that this year then to put an end to it in a concise way that feels like everyone's had their actions in the past are justified and it's not going to lead to sour grapes.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
You know, on one hand, it's like I traded for all these dead slots thinking worst case scenario, I keep them, but like I can probably move off of them at some point in the future as people get desperate. So like, yeah,
exactly.
If we were to get rid of trades in a month or now or whatever, it definitely changes my strategy and how I've done things. And it kind of bites me, but I'm also okay with that because I just want this to be more fun. And so then if we alter the trade deadline or system or whatever, how do we drive more engagement for the next 3 quarters? Is that more slots? And that brings us to another thing that I had floated privately, which is, do we increase the number of counter picks? And that introduces some logistical things that we would have to iron out. Like, does that mean everyone gets more money? Does that mean everyone gets more money? And then we cap how much could be spent on counter picks moving forward, so no one is like unfairly affected by how much they've already spent. You know what I mean? And then it just creates a little more interaction, a little more risk reward for picking up some of the crazy stuff like Sandland or whatever, right? And we're getting more interaction, but it would have to be done fairly so that nobody is left like Chris having the least budget, is disproportionately affected. So, do we say, hey, everyone gets X amount, they can't spend it on games, it can only be spent on counterpick? I don't know, but do we want to look into something like that? I don't know, Nick, how do you feel about that?
I feel like that is a even harder thing to change because of what you were just talking about. Like it would change the decision-making process that you had up until this point. And it was never something that we talked about as being a consideration like we have with the trade deadline. Like we never really, like we said October or Halloween or whatever for the trade deadline, but we also said that that was not a set in stone date, that it could move up, it could move back, whatever. The number of slots we had, like we debated this for a little bit when we were deciding the league rules and options. So to then change it mid-year feels like a unforced sort of change. Like I agree. I wish we had more counterpick slots because of how risky everyone's been. But people have been risky in relation to the number of counterpick slots. So it changes those decision making, like decisions that we'd made, and with the available drops that we all have and everything. So it was more just, this is how we've played with the system in place, and to rebuild the ship while we're all sailing on it seems like a bad idea.
It's interesting. I mean, last year, I know, Chris, we felt similarly. It felt like pulling fucking teeth trying to, with 4 counterpicks each and one less player. It was like, dude, fucking Christ, the counterpicks have become so unfun. It's like I have to choose between an 80 and a 83, and it just fucking sucked. This year, I'm like, yeah, we could do at least 2 more counterpicks, and it adds more intrigue to everyone's decision making. And yeah, people would play less risky, but we still have a lot of slots to fill, so it has to happen. So it's a totally different game this year, trades aside. And obviously, I'm sitting here like, well, Nick, you told us so. But like at the time, I was right there with Chris and like fighting against the number of counterpicks. I was like, last year, it felt like too much last year for me.
It could have been more last year. It should have been more last year.
That's crazy.
Make those hard decisions. It's a lot more fun, I think, when you have to like choose what anchor you're tying around your neck. I think that is very interesting and very fun. I mean, Chris is even in a league where he has as many counterpick slots as he has regular pickup slots. I mean, that's a fully different thing. Obviously, that's a meme league, but it changes the way you play. And I really do like the risk as much as I like the reward.
Well, this has been a learning experience for sure. I still think it's been fun. I think we can tweak things to make it more fun as we move forward. God forbid we get to the end of the year and anyone's feeling so burned out they don't want to do it again. That's like not what we want. We want to keep it fun and engaging and entertaining. So I think this is a good conversation. It's productive. So it sounds like maybe the counterpick thing is too untenable to tweak.
That's how I feel personally. Even if we did add budget, like I don't want to have to make changes. I don't think we do have to make changes. I don't think we're in a place where we're like disinterested. Obviously, we're having a podcast about it. One of 4 at least podcasts that we'll have with the 5 of us talking about this stupid game that we play. Like, we're spending hours and hours throughout the year engaging with this thing. We don't need to like fine tune it anymore. I think we're good right now.
Okay, so trade deadline. Do we want to move that up?
I think if we move it, to before the traditional E3 timeframe, because there's going to be a lot of like rumblings and smoke, but we're not going to have a lot more knowledge at that point. So I think that's a fun time to like say, hey, shit or get off the pot. And then we can start making bids. And that be the thing that we transition to being shady about, is the games that aren't on the table yet. And that we're like, oh, if Chris and EJ see that I potentially am bidding on a game, like, do you guys want to work together to try and take me down like you did last year when I did my shotgun blast? Like that was a lot of fun. I really liked that kind of interaction that we had.
Yeah. I'm down to move it up if everyone is feeling similarly. And it sounds like I'm the most happy with the trade system, which is probably not a good thing. So maybe we look at like end of May, like we just call it the 31st and just be like, trades are done. And that gives us 2.5 quarters of good old fashioned fun.
EJ's birthday, May 27th.
I don't want to have to be thinking about this on my birthday. Last minute trades. I'm sitting here on vacation being like, wait, Chris, I got to make a trade with you.
May 31st, good with me.
Yeah, I'm good with May. I'm good with May 31st. I'm either good with May 31st or finishing
June
out this year and changing it for next
better.
year.
June 1st
The
sounds
funny
better.
thing, the absolute funniest thing about May 31st is that of the dated games that we have on our roster right now, collective roster, that's half. Half the games will have come out by May 31st if nothing gets delayed.
I like that.
Right at the median, baby.
May 31st it is then? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what you're hearing.
I'm cool with it.
Get your trades in now, boys. Work your subterfuge while you can.
EJ, World of Goo, May 23rd. Are you going to get rid of it? Are you going to finally get rid of it?
I don't want to get rid of it.
Because boy, you've tried. I have stats on everything that's been offered, everything that's been requested, and World of Goo highly offered in 4 of your trade packages.
It's like one of the few assets I have that people like. No one wants Metro, but like World of Goo is going to be a good game, and now has a date. So it's kind of like one of the few things I could toss around trying to get.
You've offered Metro
5
5 times, EJ. Nobody wants it, but you offer it more than World of Goo. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, learn, EJ. Learn.
Thank you, Brennan.
Like the reason Brandon did the terrible Earthblade trade, which was always terrible, and I've been fucking saying it for months, was because he was like, well, I need to get off of one of my counter picks and I can just drop Earthblade. So he way overpaid for a free drop, basically.
Whoa. That's not the whole reason. I believe that Earthblade was going to come out, and I felt that, or potentially come out, and if it did potentially come out, that its score would be higher than the accumulative of the Final Fantasy 16 DLC and a Vision of Mana. And then if it didn't, I at least got off a counter pick trade in case Visions of Mana didn't, because I was getting a little bit worried because Square had recently said how they were going to take a step back and they were going to take longer on their games and stop just like shooting games out. And so it's like, oh, is this game actually going to come out this year or not? So like, maybe it's all like, since there's 2 games without release dates, one that pretty confident it would get one. It's like, it was a risk. It was a risky trade. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. See how it plays out. And it played out really well for Chris. And I am very happy for him.
I got to pull up my text about Earthblade, see what I said at the time. It was never coming out. I tried to tell you, Brandon.
I know.
I tried.
And I thought that maybe it wouldn't, maybe it wouldn't. I wasn't on never. I didn't have a never feeling.
It never was. It's funny, though, because Earthblade was part of my bait bids. I had a couple of weeks where it was just a bunch of $1 bait bids, and those went over splendidly. I got some people to overspend 2 different weeks in a row, and Earthblade was a part of that. And I only bid $1 because I knew it wasn't coming out, but I knew it was enough to entice people because it will be good when it comes out. It should be good. I don't know. It's going to be worse than Celeste.
It'll probably be worse than Celeste.
But anyway.
Before Brennan has to go, really quickly, I wanted to go through everybody's roster of released games as it stands. And just purely points on the board. Brennan has 3 games released. One of his counter picks is also released, sitting at 39.8 points. Chris has 1 release and 1 counter pick release, sitting at negative 0.7. EJ with 4 releases, no counter pick releases at 56.8. Me with 4 releases, no counter pick releases at 67.1. And Brandon with 4 releases, no counter pick releases at 51.6. So we're all doing pretty good as it stands. Points on the board.
Looking at the projections, not Fantasy Critic's projections, just looking at games with dates, potential scores. I think it's going to be a pretty close race for the next little while. And I think that's great. That's what we want. We don't want a runaway winner like we did 2 years ago, right? So,
and last year, for a little bit of context, we had 23 games released before April with an average of 80.7 for the review scores. This year we have 17 releases before April with an average of 83.86. So very front loaded with high scoring games, but not as many as last year. So we are being a little bit slower, being a little bit more cautious. We're looking ahead. We're being risky. And we'll see how that ends up panning out. But with more drops, we're going to have a larger game span of how many games we've actually interacted with and bid on and dropped and picked up.
Yeah.
Ideally, I hope that people use their drops. I think every one of us has used a drop at least.
I think I have 1 drop left. After this week, I think I got
Brennan
1 left.
Diamond Hands over here.
Okay, let me ask you then. If we aren't going to add counter picks, I hate to even say it, should we consider a super drop again so that there are options for counter picks so that we can add that wrinkle back in? If people, if they choose to drop a counter pick, that adds a little intrigue as people start picking risky things up, or they can save it for, some boner of a pick.
I think if we add a super drop, it would be, would it be weird to add the restriction to only be on counter picks?
I don't think so. Because it gives us the option.
Or maybe you can only drop a counter picked game that has not released even.
Okay. I think that would be an interesting compromise. It doesn't put anyone at a disadvantage because of their spending through the first quarter. It doesn't let someone drop a bad pick, which was kind of the annoying thing about last year.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it some more. I think that's more interesting to drop a game that doesn't have a score, as always. Like, I think that makes it more risky. Like, you have to, bet against yourself.
I think you're onto something by tethering it to counter picks. I think that because that is the one thing that is weirdly immovable, not that a game is counterpicked, but that your counterpick of a game somehow is then like also sacrosanct, that it can never be affected again. That is like a weirdly immovable feature in a way that doesn't match the rest of the way that we've designed things. So I would support adding one specifically for a counterpick.
It being like a counter pick that's not a scored game with the time frame of allowing, like if you're dropping a counter pick, it should only be so that a person can also move off the game that was counter picked previously. So it'd have to be like a full 2 weeks before the game comes out. So there's enough time for them to put in the drop request and be sure there's not going to be reviews that drop a week before the game comes out, that kind of thing.
Right. I think we can workshop this and bring it to the table in the next couple of weeks. I think we're onto something though, and this would, especially once we move off of trades, will keep the potential for interaction higher without all the fuckery.
If we're going to do this, then we need to make a decision like immediately, because you know what I'm going to want, the counter pick that I'm going to want to move off of. So either we implement the feature as fast as fucking possible or we don't do it, because if we implement it and it's slow rolled to the point that I don't get to use it for the game I want to, then what's the fucking point? So let's get to the getting if we're going to do it. I don't want this to become backburnered and it's like, oh, sorry. And then everybody else is dropping their fucking unscored counter pick games. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah. And that's the tough thing about trying to do something this late in the game where both you and Brandon have released counter picks. I don't know if you or Brandon would have dropped your counter picks that have scores right now.
I definitely know of one that I want to drop.
Exactly. But I mean, you wouldn't have been confident that game would get above a 75 anyway. So that wouldn't have been something that you would have even thought to drop unless something much more favorable was an option. So yeah, it is tough to implement something like this when it is a deadline kind of thing and there's options on the table that have already been taken. And yeah, we'll have to talk about it a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more in the Discord and chat about it. Obviously, we have a deadline for Brendan getting out of here.
It's early enough in the year with only the 2 on the board with other options for Bren and I to drop counter picks that could potentially hurt worse than the ones that we already have had released, that I do think we should talk this in Discord and make a choice like in the next couple days.
I mean, like, this is important for me too, because I mean, I'm the one sitting here with the Hollow Knight CP, which is the most genius or the most terrible play ever.
That could get shadow dropped.
It was
tomorrow.
always a bad play. I tried to tell you that when I have it. It was always a bad play.
No, I'm still going with it's not coming out. Still not coming out. But it would be nice to have a safety net. I'm not going to go against that.
This has been an illuminating episode of the Console Crusade podcast, 151, Fantasy Critic Quarterly. You can go to solo.to/Console Crusade. You can find our boards there. I know a couple of you listening follow along. So it's all over there at fantasycritic.games. It's been good. Brandon, thank you. Brennan, thank you.
Thank you.
Not only for being here, but also for putting up with all of this.
Oh, this is fun.
The
I
text
love
message that you just see text message from EJ and you're like, well, I wonder what he wants.
I got 2 dead slots I'm trying to move off of. I'm fielding offers, all right? Anybody interested in anything on my board? Elden Ring is up for grabs, but it has to be a good trade. And you have to convince me without any subterfuge.
Indiana Jones for Hades.
You're trying to move off of the slots you just picked up? What?
He's got an angle. All right. Count us down.
This has been the Console Crusade podcast. Brennan, you have 4 minutes. You're stuck with me for 4 minutes, motherfucker.
4 minutes of playtime.
You're muted.